again, going back to the Kordbot. You really guys are really interested in the Kordbot. First 10 minutes of play video again, August 2018. How do you get the bass notes? I think I said in the last Mailbag video I did, you can transpose up and down 5 octaves. So in order to get the the Kordbot to start on a lower, so it starts at C3 and it will arpeggiate up and down from C3, but if you want to arpeggiate up and down from C1 for argument's sake, you can transpose it down 2 octaves. So the lower C is then C1 and you get your bass notes. So simple as that. Next one is from Made in Machines in response again to the Kordbot first 10 minutes of play, so August 2018. Have you had a go with the sequencer yet? Can it sequence notes as well as chords? I'm curious about the arpeggiator functions and patterns it has. Seems really great. Do you like it? Well, the answer is yes, I do like it. But up until recently, I've literally been using it for chord progression. So when this thing is running, and I will do some more videos about this, okay? So when this thing is up and running, you effectively you can see all the chord structures down the side here. And effectively when you press a C, it will play whatever chord note you've instigated on there. So majors, minors, minor 6, 7th, major 7ths, etc, etc. So it's got loads of different chord variations. And if you're doing chord progressions, what you can do is you can say I want it on that one, and you go boom boom boom, no I don't like that, go to minor, boom boom. You get the drift. You can start to play around and see what sounds good. So that's how I've been using it, and I've been using it really successfully like that because it's sort of really helped me out in terms of my thinking. But I have just started to explore the other areas of this thing and started to get into it. So it comes with 4 modes of operation. It comes with key plus mod, which is the sort of standard mode of operation. Then it comes with something called diatonic mode, diatonic strum mode, and poly mode. And they are far too complex to try and explain on this. I will have to do separate videos about them because I'm still trying to get my head around it. But it's sort of quite a weird way of how it works, but that's a different matter. So I'm really starting to get into how this thing works and how this thing can be used. It's not straightforward, okay? Just bear that in mind. In terms of the chord structures themselves, you can, in terms of the basic way, you can actually you can start with a sort of root inversion of a chord structure, and you can tell the unit you want to use a first inversion, a second inversion, a third inversion, and it will appropriately shift the notes up from C3. So if you want that inversion to be lower than C3, you have to obviously use the octave option to knock it down or knock it up, depending on which way you want to go. And then you can use the inversion function to invert the chord through several different iterations depending on what you want. So that's all sort of built in as standard. That's quite easy to use. You can structure your own chords in here. Honestly, I haven't got into that yet. I'm still trying to get my head around everything else this thing does. I mean, there's so much functionality built into this little unit. It's quite frightening. In terms of the sequencer question, though, Isla Instruments haven't released the version of the firmware that has the sequencer option. So I can't give you any feeling of how good it is and how it's going to work. What we do know is it's going to be a multi-thousand step sequencer, but in actual terms of how it's going to work, can't tell you that yet. The latest firmware was released in November 2018, and I haven't seen a version of firmware released since, so we are waiting. There's a big community of people waiting for the sequencer stuff to arrive. Okay, the next one is from Yokada, or Ross as he prefers to be known. Hi John, would be interested to hear what you have in your studio rack in terms of outboard effects. I've been toying with the idea of picking up an early 90s Ensoniq DP4 or DP2 model. Just wondering if you had any experience with these units. sorry mate, don't have any experience with the InSonic stuff. I have had a look at it. I've seen some demos of it, and I think, you know, I think to myself quite often that maybe I'm going to sort of dip my hand in my pocket and buy one. The problem I have is I tend to use the outboard effects on the older keyboards that don't have internal effects. So a lot of the more modern stuff has sort of various echoes and choruses and etc. built into the unit itself, and you can put those onto the signal. But the older stuff doesn't have any of that sort of stuff, and that tends to be what I use this stuff on. I actually have two MIDI Verve 4s in my racks for when I'm playing, and I tend to find they work really well for me when I'm playing through stuff. In terms of where do I put the effects on, though, that's sort of the million-dollar question. Quite often I will record the signal into the DAW with the effect on, but then you see I then get slapped on the wrist by all the sound engineers who want to put the effect on once you've played a dry signal into your DAW, because they then want to run all the virtual effects that come with the DAWs. I sit on the fence on this because I've been in studios years ago with sound engineers and keyboard players almost coming to fisticuffs over this sort of stuff, where the keyboard player has got his keyboard set up with the sound that he wants and the band have decided on, and the sound engineer wants to strip all that out and just wants the dry signal in. I've literally, I mean, I've seen a sound engineer be held against the wall by a keyboard player before, so it's a very mute subject. I did see a demo from Espen Craft, and I've put a link in the response to this, to that particular video, because he is an utter fan of the Eventide H3000. Now, I've looked at the Eventide H3000. I think it's a very good unit. Would I go and buy one at the moment? Probably not, because I think I'm getting everything I need out of the MIDI verbs. But maybe in the future I will sort of like, you know, have a look and see if I can expand my racks. But I'm tending not to buy any more stuff at the moment, or trying not to buy any more stuff at the moment, until my living accommodation and studio accommodation is sorted itself out, because I'm basically running out of space in the studio, and I don't want to really sort of move the studio again until I know what I'm doing from a living accommodation perspective. So you sort of get the drift. So once I know what I'm doing from a living accommodation perspective, I know where I'm moving the studio to next. Boom. And the last one in this section from Eliag 1. What are the physical dimensions of the A80? Oh, I can tell you it's big. Okay, so in terms of width, as in if I'm looking at this keyboard here, that dimension, it is nearly 1.4 meters long. Now I'm 1.8 meters high, so that's 6 foot. So 1.4 meters long is sort of well into the 4.5, nearly 5 foot range. Okay, so it's a very wide. It's 88 keys and they're fully weighted. Okay, that's the first thing to bear in mind. In terms of this dimension, which is the depth of the unit, right, it's nearly 40 centimeters, which is sort of a yay about that. So it's nearly 0.5 meter wide. Okay, so again, it's a big unit. And in terms of depth at the back, so obviously it's slightly wedged, but the back end is nearly 12 centimeters deep. So that gives you a rough idea of what the volumetric size of this thing is. It's big, believe me, it is big, and it's heavy as well. Okay, so you don't normally think about it that 30 kilos is not really heavy, but when you've got something that's wide and deep, trying to maneuver 30 kilos, believe you me, is quite a feat. You have to sort of get yourself around and lift it in a certain way. And I remember putting it on the stand in the studio when we were using it in the studio for doing some work about 6 months ago. Because of the tight and compact nature of the studio, it took 2 of us, because I couldn't maneuver it myself without probably doing myself quite a big injury. So this is the point in the video where I turn around to you, my viewer, and say, if you enjoyed the content of this video, please give it a thumbs up. The way the Google and YouTube analytic engines work is that the more likes you get against a video, the more it gets promoted by YouTube and Google, and therefore more people with the similar interests to what you have and I have get to see this content. This channel is driven by my love of music technology. That's what it's called, the Music Tech Guy Thought. If you've got queries, want to ask questions about themes or issues I raise on this channel, please, please, please do. Put your comments into the comment section below the video, and I will try to address whatever issue it is you've raised or whatever question you've raised. If it's something to do with me making future videos in terms of how to do something on a particular piece of equipment I possess, please feel free to say that as well. I can't promise to make videos on all the requests I get, but I do have a jolly good go at making most of them. Around about here is the subscribe button. Again, to do with the YouTube and Google analytic process, the more subscribers the channel gets, the more the channel gets promoted, and the more people get to see the content that you have obviously just watched. If you want to see my latest video, it will be in one of these two boxes on this side of the screen. Also, there is a second box there, and that video will be chosen for you by YouTube based on your YouTube preferences. I look forward to the next time that we interact, and I do mean interact because I always enjoy reading your comments back to me. But for now, bye-bye.